My name is Bobby. My journey continues. A journey that will take me to a strange and dark place. A soap opera without vampires. And episodes that are still only shadows in most people's minds. A watch pot never boils, to coin a phrase. Roger, you're a fool. Not 1/10 the fool you are, my dear. Elizabeth, with all our ghosts, we don't need any strangers in this house. Hi, I'm Bobby, and welcome to Dusty Old Movies. I started collecting Dark Shadows when I was 13, and fell in love with Barnabas Collins. I collected every DVD collection, went to a Dark Shadows convention, and then MPI released the final volume, and the party was over. Then I heard that they'd be releasing the rarely seen first year episodes on DVD. I knew there'd be no Barnabas. Woe is me! But I wanted more Dark Shadows, so I decided to check out that very first storyline, which are episodes 1 through 127, and for the DVDs are Dark Shadows The Beginning Volume 1 through Dark Shadows The Beginning Volume 4. It's the storyline that laid the Gothic foundation for the true horrors yet to come. One night in New York, the macho producer Dan Curtis had a dream about a girl on a train riding towards a strange Gothic mansion. In the morning, he told his wife Norma about it, and she said that it sounded like a great opening for a TV show. Dan the man thought so too, and he pitched the idea to ABC as a new soap opera. Writer Art Wallace fleshed out Dan's ideas and created the series Bible, which included the cast of characters, their backgrounds, and future potential storylines. And he titled this document, Shadows on the Wall. I can make a bunny. Shadows on the Wall showed enough promise for ABC, and they offered Dan a 6-month commitment to the series, with an option to renew depending on the ratings. Dan changed the title from Shadows on the Wall to Dark Shadows, and ABC advertised it as daytime's first continuing suspense drama. The series would be gothic in tone, like the novel Jane Eyre, with spooky-looking sets and moody lighting. Always the innovator, Dan Curtis shot on-location footage in Newport and Essex to give the series a larger scope. And for extra panache, he cast old-time movie star Joan Bennett as the Collins family matriarch Elizabeth Collins Stoddard. On Monday, June 13th of 1966, the Dark Shadows team began their journey of cranking out 5 shows a week for the next 5 years and carving their Gothic place in television history.
By the light of the silvery moon, I want to spoon, to my honey I'll croon.
Orphan Victoria Winters is going to be the new governess at the House of Collinwood in Collinsport, Maine, and she hopes to find out some information about her past. At Collinwood, there's Elizabeth Collins Stoddard, her brother Roger, her nephew David, her daughter Carolyn, and her charming caretaker Matthew Morgan. Arriving on the same train as Vicky is Burke Devlin. 10 years ago, Burke was found guilty of manslaughter. Believing Roger Collins to be the guilty one, he has come back for revenge against the Collins family. In order to protect Elizabeth, Bill Malloy, manager of the Collins family fishing fleet, organizes a meeting between Burke, Roger, and Sam Evans. But Bill is mysteriously killed on the way, and suspicions arise around who killed Bill Malloy. Meanwhile, Victoria Winters is constantly terrorized by David, Roger, and Matthew, all 3 of whom are much more than what they appear. While I love the gothic novel atmosphere of these early episodes, the story itself is hit and miss. There are exciting moments, and it is interesting to see the Collins family deal with realistic problems. But there are 2 major issues plaguing the storyline, and one of them is the pacing. Once Dark Shadows went spooky, it was actually the fastest moving soap opera on TV. But believe me, it did not start out that way. Take the infamous pen subplot. The night of Bill Malloy's death, Roger loses Burke's pen, and the discussion of this pen goes on for episodes and episodes. The pen. Let's see, I was standing just about here. Carolyn came in, offered me the pen, and left. Then I put the pen in my pocket. Could I change coats? The pen, the pen. It goes on forever, and it's just a pen. It's not even something cool like a machine gun. The other problem is when they make the switch to go spooky, like near the end of the story, all the storylines are either dropped, like Vicky's search for her parents, or just quickly wrapped up. So if you know that going in, it makes it really hard to get invested in the story. And if you are invested, it's really disappointing, because so much of the drama leads to nothing. While I do have problems with the plot, one thing about the story that I love are the villains. There are 4 main villains in this story, and my favorite is Louis Edmonds as Roger Collins. After blowing his share of the inheritance, woohoo! Let's buy up all the brandy in the world! Woohoo! Roger is back at home at Collinwood and doing everything he can to keep Burke from learning about the manslaughter incident. Louis really shines here. He's manipulative, charming, pompous, and arrogant. He does mean things all over the place and has some of his best lines in the story. I'm sorry about your car accident, Father.
Sorry that I survived.
He's so funny, but there's also something sinister about him. The original plan was that he was going to try to kill Vicky and then accidentally fall to his death. Louis was just too fabulous to kill off, but those dark, murderous traces are still present in his performance. And in terms of being sinister, it's like father like son with David Hennessy as David Collins. I changed my mind, Miss Winters. I would go to your funeral. Why would you go to my funeral? Because I like funerals. David, aka the little monster, is filled with hate, tries to kill Roger and Vicky, and believes he's friends with the ghosts of Collinwood. But David Hennessy also brings a real little boy quality to his performance, which makes him endearing, but at the same time more disturbing. He also has great scenes with Roger and with the third main villain of the story. Mitch Ryan is Burke Devlin. After being falsely sentenced to manslaughter and serving a prison sentence, largely due to Roger's false testimony, Burke has become a rich man in business, possibly illegal business, and has returned to Collinsport to destroy the Collins family. Burke is handsome, masculine, and forceful. Yes, I know he does sound like me. He can show kindness, but also craftiness, such as when he's on his date with Carolyn. Carolyn, meet Mr. Blair. He's a nefarious old swindler who I'm engaged with to defraud your mother of all her invested interests. Oh, Burke. All 3 of these villains would eventually mellow out and become supporting characters, and part of the appeal is seeing them in their original form. However, the 4th villain of the story turned out to be a great surprise for me. The creepy caretaker, Matthew Morgan. First played by George Mitchell, and then played by Dark Shadows regular, There David. Matthew is the gruff but loyal caretaker to the Collins family, so loyal that he commits murder. When Vicky finds out, he holds her captive in the old house. George does a good job at playing the crusty old man, but Thayer is so threatening in this role. However, there's also a touch of innocence with him too, because he didn't mean to commit murder, but as the situation becomes more desperate, he succumbs to paranoia and insanity. My enemies, they're everywhere. I know you're one of them. I see right through you. Sometimes I think I ought to kill you. Sometimes I think I ought to kill all my enemies. Matthew was turned into a villain when they decided not to kill off Roger, and Thayer makes it a rousing finish to this story. Along with the villains making things interesting, so does the show's introduction to the supernatural. The supernatural is gradually introduced into the series, and this approach is very believable and very creepy. Although the original intention was not to go supernatural, in keeping with a gothic novel, there is plenty of early talk about the ghosts of Collinwood. With horrifying low ratings, and Dan's kids wanting him to make the show spooky, Dan had Vicky see a figure at the window, and then when she leaves the room, the Collins family history book opens by itself to the page of Josette Collins, and then her ghost walks around the estate. It's a natural progression from talking about ghosts to seeing them, so the moment feels exciting, but not unbelievable. And while it doesn't affect the plot, it does firmly establish ghosts as part of Collinwood. The next big thing is when the ghost of Bill Malloy appears, dripping of seaweed, and warns Victoria Winters to leave Collinwood. After the ghost leaves, Roger and Elizabeth find the seaweed. Roger, in all the time you've lived in this house, even when you were a child, have you ever seen anything that you would actually call a ghost? I'm not sure. I've seen and felt things I can't explain. You can't tell me it hasn't happened to you because I know better. By having the more level-headed Elizabeth and Roger seriously confront the issue of ghosts, it gives the supernatural stronger roots in reality. Then, near the end of the story, the ghosts of the widows and Bill Malloy drive Matthew Morgan insane. Matthew, I want your life. I want your life, Matthew. The ghostly encounters become creepier and more involved as they occur, giving us time to suspend our disbelief and for the suspense to build for the shocking and creepy conclusion. These bits of Supernatural gave the ratings boost necessary for ABC to pick up their option for renew, allowing for more horrors yet to come. Although Matthew Morgan would never resurface, there David would go on to play more roles on Dark Shadows than any other actor on the series. And strangely enough, the idea of Burke defeating the Collins family by going into a competing business would later be used by Angelique in the 2012 Dark Shadows movie. While the story does have its weak points, if you already love Dark Shadows and have seen a lot of the Barnabas episodes, I think you'd find the storyline fascinating to see how it began and how it became supernatural. However, it does not stand on its own, so if you've never seen Dark Shadows, I don't recommend starting here. And for that reason, I have to give it 2.5 brandy sifters out of 4. Thank you for watching Dusty Old Movies, and have a supernatural day.